Hey, Maddy, welcome back to the Blog Chronicles once again.
Thanks for having me back.
You were on with me previously on an episode called How to Create an Expert Roundup Post for the First Time, Part 1. And today is Part 2.
Seems like it's been so long since that first episode.
Well, it kind of has,
but
actually.
We accomplished what we set out to do.
Yes, we did, and that's what we want to talk about today. We did, in fact, create an Expert Roundup post, and we have some things to go over, and we hope that Part 1 and Part 2 will help bloggers to decide if they even want to create an epic Expert Roundup post and how to do it.
Yeah.
So you can learn from our mistakes, which we'll talk about here in a minute. When I say mistakes, we're going to talk about anything that we might do differently now in hindsight, what we actually did learn from this and things like that. What we did was we ended up, first of all, let me talk about the topic real quick. In our initial Part 1 conversation, we did not have a topic nailed down. When we finally came up with how to make money using curation, that was our topic. Mm-hmm. Let's see. So we created a opt-in form, and do you want to talk a little bit about that for a second?
Sure. So basically, we made use of Google Forms, which seems to be a pretty popular way to go about this type of thing. And we sent an email to a bunch of people. I mean, it was probably, almost like 200 people or something like that, maybe more. And, basically just told them about our project, kind of set them up for the topic, and then asked them to fill out the form, which was simply name, email, response, Twitter handle, and then we also included a link for them to add a headshot. And that's kind of an important thing to touch on, just because with Google Forms, you can't directly upload a picture. So you have to think through how you're going to get those headshots, because you don't want to wait, obviously, until, the minute you're putting together the roundup to get that stuff from people.
How did they get those headshots to us? Some of them directly had to email them to us, right?
Right. So what happened was we asked for a link to like a Dropbox or Google Drive photo. And in some cases, even when they did provide the link, sometimes there was like a permissions issue. So it's definitely something you want to look into, or maybe like test the links that you have before it's crunch time.
Very, very true. That was one thing that we would do a little differently if we could. Yeah, I wish I had somebody on here that has done like 100 of these things.
Yeah.
That
be interesting to see how they find, better ways to do those little things that are kind of afterthoughts until they become important.
Exactly. I know somebody that does them for a living, but she doesn't like to just tell you everything she knows, which is understandable.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So maybe I should just hire her.
Yeah. Get her secrets.
Exactly. And so, it was actually, I think, around 150 folks that we sent an invitation to. And if you go to the post, which there's a link to that in the show notes, you can see that we ended up with, not counting you and I, we had a response of 38 people, which I think that, it's interesting because on the Part 1 show, we were talking about how a lot of people get a result of about 30%. And that's not too far from 30%.
Yeah, I would say that overall we did pretty well with that conversion. And I think also what maybe helped is we kind of extended the deadline a couple days. And so a couple people who, must have been initially overwhelmed with the first email or two we sent were like, okay, I really do want to participate. And now I have time to do that. And then, we got in a couple more responses at that final hour.
Yeah, and I think that's a good lesson right there, is to not be too shy about asking, or, don't feel like you're bugging the expert if you do need to send 2 or 3 emails. Now, 10 is probably going overboard.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you need to send maybe 3, let's see, in our process we had initially, and if you're wondering why some of these details are a little fuzzy, because this has been over a few months in the process. But yeah, we typically just emailed them. We had the initial invitation,
Hmm.
and then we had a follow up if they had not responded, or yeah, I was trying to remember how we did that.
Yeah, I think if somebody had contributed already, we just took them off our follow-up list.
Yes, that's
Or if
correct.
somebody had said, I'm just not interested in doing expert roundup contributions right now, then same thing.
And then we just had the announcement that it's now ready and published. Of course, once it was all done. So let's see. Anything else on that you want to talk about on the Google form?
No, I think, obviously like with the conversions mindset, you want to keep it as simple as possible, make it as easy for people to contribute. Like with the headshot thing, we just added some extra text on there to say, just send a link to Google Drive or Dropbox. So, kind of closing any gaps there might be. But just making sure that you don't have too many fields, because then that gets overwhelming and that'll affect the responses.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that I think our form was pretty good
Yeah.
and not overwhelming. Didn't get any complaints.
I
So,
will say that some people, it might have been useful to expand a little bit more on the topic in the email we sent. I think we did like tee it up a bit and gave people kind of an idea of what we were looking for without, biasing their responses.
mhm.
But it could have been maybe helpful to add just a little bit more of a context to our question, just because we picked the topic that we thought didn't have a lot of coverage. And so, of course, when people were responding to it, then, it was a little bit more of like a mental challenge to come up with an answer.
Yeah, maybe so.
It's hard to say because you don't want to bias responses.
Right, right. And if you lead them on too much, or if you give them too much direction, then you're limiting their response too.
Right.
We got a pretty good diversity of responses. I thought that was helpful for the reader.
And a diversity of respondents, I would say too, because we had some more like smaller niche bloggers, but then we also had some of like the big names that
Hmm.
anyone would know.
Yeah, yeah. Like Ted Rubin, who I've discovered recently has like 12 Twitter accounts.
Oh,
So,
wow. That must be a biatch to maintain.
yeah, I would imagine so. Um, that's true. There was a good diversity of folks, um, and that's,
But
I
that
think.
was helpful in getting a diversity of responses too, because obviously someone who has like a super large audience like Ted Rubin or like Adam Connell,
Mhm.
it's going to be a different story when they're trying to, I don't know, promote affiliate products or something like that, as opposed to somebody like Kat, who has a blog about Spain. And, obviously her content is going to appeal to a very specific type of person.
True.
But there's money in it for either any of those people, if they find the right products or the right strategies to
Right.
monetize curation.
But I know, like, having some bloggers included, like Kat, was really helpful for my audience.
Hmm.
And so, it was just that diversity was very helpful on my end, probably your end too. And the formatting, it's interesting that you talked about the link of the photos and collecting those headshots, which I recently came across a Roundup where they had no headshots at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that to just be not as good of an experience. And so
Right.
you definitely, I think, want to include the headshots.
It helps, if nothing else, it helps to break up all that, like all those walls of text, because we had some people that, sent in a couple sentences, but then we had like some people who wrote novels, and just like looking at that without anything to break it up would have been awful.
Right, it would be. And so because we got those links to the photos, those headshots, and we ended up with various sizes of photos.
Hmm.
The one criticism that I heard from someone was that the headshots were different photo sizes, so it didn't look good in the formatting.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair enough criticism. I guess my counter to that would be, if we required each speaker to fit like a certain, or not speaker, each contributor to, do like 150 by 150 or something like that, and we were rigid about it, that could have gotten in the way of them contributing because,
Right.
possibly maybe they're just not good with image manipulation. Maybe they just don't have the time to do it. Um, so, I mean, I would say maybe from our end, that could have been something that we could have standardized from them, but also, we just got so many different types of headshots. Some of them were, like bust shots. Some of them were full body shot. You know what I mean? It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we could have maybe customized that a little more, added, some direction for that, but I don't know that it would have had a big enough effect to justify the effort that would have gone into it.
Right. I think the more stipulations you put on people, the less likely you're going to get results or returns.
Right.
Um, People at turning things in.
One thing I guess I'll add to that to kind of finish off my thoughts on the matter is, an expert roundup I participated in. I think it was like Rank Watch or something. They made these really cool custom graphics for each person, kind of like what you do on your blog, where it's like like a bit of a cartoon caricature.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, yeah, if we had, unlimited resources, that could have been pretty cool. That's
Yeah.
something for the bigger guys, I think, to think about when they're putting together roundups that they want to get, as many shares as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're just like regular Joe putting together a roundup, and, you have limited time and budget and, even like access to a graphic designer, then it's just, I think it's just a small thing in the grand scheme of things. What's more important is having good representation with the types of people that participate.
Yeah, absolutely true. And you want them to look good, and I think the size of the photo size thing is just a matter of opinion. Um,
Sure.
and it's really also depends on how much time and sweat equity you want to put into your post.
Exactly.
If you have the ability to, if you want to change the sizes and spend more time on it, then by all means go right ahead.
Exactly. And I think that's a good takeaway in general from this experience. It's like with, like I said, with unlimited time, you can do so many things with it,
Hmm.
but you have to decide what are the most important things to make this successful. And then if I do have extra time, cool, I'll focus on those things. But, what is kind of like not the bare minimum, but, the important things to focus on.
Yeah, the post it got some good shares. It got around, I think, 150 to 200 shares on all the social media, which really isn't a whole lot, but
Mhm.
um,
How does it compare to like your typical blog post on your site?
it was actually a little bit. It was good. I've
Mhm.
noticed there's been a drop in shares, like in general over the last
Sure.
year, and I think a lot of sites are seeing that. So it's kind of all relative to what your site is used to. I think it was pretty good, but not maybe as good as I would have liked.
Sure.
And
So maybe, a takeaway from that too is maybe we needed to have a better promotional plan in place where,
mhm.
we followed up with the speakers more, where we had more regular scheduled content to promote it and to encourage people to share it. Stuff
Very
like
true.
that could have helped.
So, what else do you think we could do differently
Hmm.
next time? Is there anything else that stands out to you?
I'm trying to think of if there was any other major stuff. I mean, I think the most important thing is just coming into it with the right structure so
Mm-hmm.
that you're not duplicating your efforts, so
Mm-hmm.
that you get the best responses, so that you're not, deterring anyone from getting involved. I think a lesson learned from me or for me from this experience is doing this once helps you to identify and collect contact information from influencers and people who like to contribute to these things so that you can then tap that again for the next one and not have to duplicate, that initial sort of information gathering step.
Oh yeah, that's true. Good point.
So that's probably one of my biggest takeaways is just like you do it once and then you're investing in the next one.
That's true. Yeah, good point. We started the spreadsheet, and you can you've always got that there to access later as well, and you can always add more to that.
Exactly. And then you can, leave yourself notes on who is the most responsive or, who would prefer not to be contacted for expert roundups and things like that.
Right, because we did find out a couple of people that maybe we've seen in the past on roundups were no longer doing them. Well-known people. There was a couple of guys I can think of that we found out are no longer doing roundup posts. So
Right.
that's good to know. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool that Dave Pell liked my tweet.
Perks.
He was the someone that I was writing about in the roundup posts. So
Mhm.
that was fun. And would I do this again? I think so. I think I would do another roundup post. I think it is a good way to make connections because I've seen since that roundup post, the connections that I made through that have actually grown stronger over time.
hmm And
Um,
and that's the benefit too, I think, of like us using our personal emails to get in touch with those people. It just
yes.
gave us an extra touch point with them.
Hmm.
Um, but that also brings up kind of another point in that it would be nice to know what the people who do these like mega roundups, how they're going about communication in an efficient way, like as far as that
Yeah.
initial email, the follow-ups, because, as you said, if we were to have sent it through something like MailChimp, then it's possible that we would have been marked as spam,
Hmm.
different metrics would have been affected. So I would really love to know what other people are doing just to have an efficiency around communication.
Right. I would like to know that too. And probably the only way I'm going to do that is to hire someone who does it, for a living. Um,
Sure. Or maybe that's the thing is that those people just basically outsource those tasks to like, assistants or something like
that's
that.
true. Yeah, they might.
That's been my experience with some of the expert roundups I've been asked to participate in. It's like someone besides the publisher reaching out to me and
Hmm.
telling me where it's going to go, but they're just the facilitator essentially.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I see that too.
Which, then there's the question of is that maybe that's an efficient way to go about it, but then like we were just talking about, we're missing out on the chance to make those personal connections with the contributors, so you have to figure out what are you willing to sacrifice on either end.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these mega sites that get, tons and tons of traffic, excuse me, I wouldn't be surprised if, a site like Smart Blogger, if I know that they do some roundups and people do roundups for them, I wouldn't be surprised if they do them as a guest post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they may not even be actually paying that person.
Right.
But that person is probably doing all the legwork.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's not always.
It seems like a possibility. I mean, and even if they're not getting paid, again, it's still the chance to make connections, so you can kind of justify time spent on it in that regard.
That's about it for this episode of the Blog Chronicles. Maddy, would you create an expert roundup post again?
Yeah, I think I would. I don't know what the topic would be, but definitely having gone through this experience with you, having someone to bounce ideas off, that makes me less nervous about the prospect of, taking it on again. So, yeah, I would definitely try it again. And just one final thought for the future is using something like Help a Reporter Out. That's something where I've been featured in a lot of expert roundups just due to, responding to queries that people send out through that tool. So for a future roundup, I would probably try to use that in addition to, the contacts that we've already made to get to more people, essentially.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, Help a Reporter Out. There's another service called HARO.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Oh. Oh, silly me. Okay.
Connection made.
Help a Reporter Out. Okay.
I just got an email from them, so it reminded me.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get those emails too. So that is so funny. I always just call it Haro or whatever.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, Maddy, it was great working with you on this, and I really appreciated your help. And let's hope that this experience can help other bloggers out there who might be thinking about doing a roundup post for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. Got to keep that in mind.